Hello, Uplifted. Welcome to our member-only podcast on myofascial release for our therapeutics focus this month. And if you're listening to this at some time in the future, you can always find the therapeutics playlist and revisit it at any time. Myofascial release is a huge, huge passion of mine. And I feel a little guilty because I feel like I'm never sharing with you all as much as I want to share about it, because there's so much to share that I get very overwhelmed with how to even begin. So it's almost like this catch-22. And I thought of it because in our book club right now, which is Big Magic, and a podcast is going to come on that book too pretty soon. But Elizabeth Gilbert in that book talks about, the artist who is so overcome and so excited and has so many great ideas and is such a perfectionist that they never begin, that they never even start. And I feel like that's a little bit what I've done with myofascial release in the group. I could literally talk about it for weeks, and there's so much I want to share that I get very intimidated about how to even begin to talk to you guys about it. But I'm going to start because I want it to be perfect, of course. And there's just so many different layers that we can peel back to go deeper and deeper into this work. I mean, if you go to the deepest level of myofascial release, it is literally almost like a religion and way to live your life. I mean religion in a good way, not a scary, bad, dogmatic way. It goes so deep, especially the Barnes methodology. So let's just start basic. I'm going to do my best. The biggest concept you need to understand first is what fascia is. Okay, so fascia is a tough connective tissue that spreads through the whole body. So it's a three-dimensional web that everything is living in, from your toes to your head. So even in teacher training, we just recently talked about, you do have lots of individual muscles, but you could literally think about it as you just have one gigantic fascial web, this spider web that exists inside your body, and it's tough, dense connective tissue, right? And this connective tissue has tons of pockets in which your muscles live in, right? So you could think of things as being separate, like we have all these different muscles, and when people started dissecting bodies, they'd just like pull the fascia off. They were like, what's this weird white saran wrap that's like covering up everything? Let's like take it off and throw it to the side and, see each of the individual muscles in dissections and look at each muscle one by one. So we were very interested in early science with dissection, right? And splitting everything into parts. Now the big paradigm shift that's happening is people are suddenly saying, whoa, this fascia stuff that we always just kind of like tossed in the garbage bags when we did dissections is actually this incredible matrix of tissue that all the muscles are living in. So basically, if we removed all the muscles from your body and all the bones from your body would retain its shape because of the fascia. The fascia is that strong. And an analogy I often give is that, say you see a chiropractor for an adjustment on your shoulder. They kind of move your collarbone and your scapula in some way. It's great, right? So they move it and you feel better the next day, maybe even the next week, but 2 or 3 weeks from now, what happens if the fascia, the web, was bound and bunched up around your collarbone, and it was also bound and bunched up maybe somewhere else in the body? So those, if you think of it like a spider web, and that everything's floating in this 3D matrix of fascia, dense spider web tissue, if that matrix that your bones are living in didn't shift as well, what's going to happen? The fascia's pulling, everything lives in the fascia, including your cells, your nerves, everything. It's going to pull that collarbone and that scapula back to their original position because the fascia didn't change as well, right? So the chiropractic adjustment was helpful, but over time, that change isn't going to last unless you were doing work on your connective tissues, your fascia as well. It's sort of just like when you have braces as a kid, right? If you have the braces, that's like the chiropractor, he moves your teeth and that's great. But if you don't wear your retainer, what happens, right? The fascia in your face and your head leading down into your gums, is the same. So all your teeth will start to go back the way they were. And I noticed this in high school, actually with my high school boyfriend. He had braces. He didn't wear his retainer. I, of course, have worn my retainer my whole life. And I noticed by our senior year of high school, his teeth, all this expensive orthodontic work that his parents had paid for, his teeth were starting to go back the way they were. So it's that, and it's because of fascia. It's the same concept, right? He didn't wear his retainer every night, so the fascia just pulled everything back the way it used to be. Same thing. You get a chiropractic adjustment, but if you don't do work on the connective tissues around that, where you had that adjustment, eventually everything's going to go back to the way that it used to. Same thing with massages. Raise your hand if you love massages, right? We all, like, getting a massage is great, but massages, traditional massages like Swedish or even deep tissue, right? They're all focused on the muscles, which means that, you know, it's going to feel nice when you're having it done. It's going to release a ton of lactic acid into the body, because that's what happens when you know, knead and massage a muscle in that way. And I don't know if anyone has had the experience, I certainly have, of having a great massage and then the next day you have like a crazy headache and kind of feel awful and really dehydrated. That's because all this lactic acid, sort of like this poison, has been released by working the muscles. And, you know, it's good. It's not like a terrible thing to do. But to me, it's like sort of like putting my money in a fireplace and then throwing in a match, because it's not helping my connective tissues. It's not helping me find homeostasis in my body or find alignment. It's sort of just like stroking my calf and having the calf release lactic acid. And again, there's some value in that. It's good. It's nice. But I'd so much rather get myofascial release done and actually work on all the connective tissue around all my calf muscles, so that my whole leg, knee joint, and ankle are actually in better alignment. That's the benefit of doing myofascial release, is that you help actually align the body. Another analogy I can give you here, because again, it's hard to understand, is that you can think of all your bones. So think of all your bones, like the bones in your spine, like seashells, okay? And then in the seashells are all in a giant candle, like inside a candle. So we made this very pretty candle that has shells on the inside. We're going to light the candle, not at the top where the wick is, but at the bottom. And what's going to happen? The wax on the bottom left side of the candle, where I lit my flame, is going to heat up the candle. And what's going to happen? All the shells, because the wax starts to melt and distort, all the shells are going to be somewhat affected, right? The shell that's at the very bottom, closest to where I lit the match, will, you know, right away maybe start distorting. But because everything, all your bones are in this wax candle, all the shells, which are your bones, right? They're all going to start to move and start to kind of like tip to the left. This is the concept that you really want to understand. Myofascial release is really the only method of body work, and one of the actually very few things out there across all Western medicine that really takes into account the whole body in this way. That a fascial restriction in my left hip area is going to affect my right shoulder, right? Because the whole web of fascia, the whole matrix, is connected. So a tightness in one area is going to affect someplace completely different in the body because of this push and pull. So this word you'll hear a lot studying myofascial release deeper is tensegrity, which is a word that's often used in architectural terms. But it basically means, tensegrity means a property that has a stable three-dimensional structure. Think of it almost like a ropes and pulleys system, right? Everything needs to be under the same amount of sort of compression for everything to work efficiently. So from this viewpoint, your fascia are like cables controlling everything in 3D space. So it's incredibly important that all those cables are the correct length. Otherwise, things are going to get pulled out of alignment, right? So a tight or a shortened cable in your low back, which we might call dehydrated fascia, is going to affect your head, neck, and spine, right? Imbalanced tension, like cables, this interior spider web, think of every little piece of the spider web as a cable, in areas of the upper body are going to affect the lower regions. So myofascial release is saying, hey, the body's not a machine, right? It's not like if you feel pain in your knee, we should just look at your knee. It's saying, no. The body is responsive and moldable, and it goes far deeper to even talk about how fascia, this tissue, has a consciousness of your own. Memories are stored in your fascia. And that may seem crazy, but I have had very personal experiences of this being true. Often when we work with the fascia, emotions that are connected to past events or trauma suddenly release. And it's not really that crazy because cells do travel in our fascial matrix. And again, if you're interested in this and want to study deeper, please check out Yoga Teacher Training, because I go very, very deep into all these principles, including sort of just like the deeper way that you can integrate fascia philosophy as sort of like a way to live your life and be the healer of your own body and others, and find incredible calm and presence in your life and in your work. It ties beautifully with yoga. I mean, super, super complementary, and even cooler in some ways, I think. I know, you can tell I'm really, really excited. But for the purposes of our therapeutics month together, here's what I want you to think about as you do the classes in this month's plan, and hopefully a little bit of self-exploration on your own, is that according to the Barnes theory of myofascial release, and I'm a huge John Barnes fan, there's not many teachers or people out there who I'm like, I'm going to travel to see you and do whatever it takes, like bow at your feet. I'm not like that, right? He's probably the only teacher that in that sense I've felt that strongly towards. And it's not just me. He has a huge amount of people who just love his seminars, love his talks. He's incredibly dynamic. And in this next round of YTT that I'm doing, I'm actually trying to arrange one of our in-person yoga teacher training modules to be in Sedona in conjunction with one of his self-healing 3-day, I think it's 3-day courses that he's giving. So you could study with him and me at the same time, which would be really cool. But I digress. What he says is that there's 3 pillars of myofascial release. There's manual manipulation, which we're all familiar with. It's sort of like getting a massage. So if you go see a myofascial release therapist, and you can find one in the John Barnes directory, it's like similar to having the experience of a massage. You're on a massage table, you don't have your clothes on, and a therapist is manually helping the fascial restrictions release or rehydrate, right? So that's one part of myofascial release. And most other scholars, like Tom Myers, sort of let it end there. But Barnes says, no, it's a triangle. That's just one part of myofascial release. The other part is what he calls rebounding, which again sounds a little nuts, but it involves, I don't know if you've ever maybe had a massage where the therapist kind of pressed on you, or kind of like they're like gently pressing, like they're trying to they like gently shake or rock you, if you can think of that. And they do that because 90% of your body, or I think 90%, a lot of our body is made of what? Like water. We're liquid. We're made of, like, there's blood inside us, water and blood. It's all liquid in there, right? So by doing this sort of like vibrational techniques, you can sort of send the fascia into chaos, which is good because you want it to like reorganize and restructure, which again, it makes a lot of sense, because if you think of your body like a house that has these cables and pulleys inside of it, and some of the cables are too short, like, things just are a little disorganized, wouldn't it make sense to like shake it, like shake everything, so that the ones that needed to could re-lengthen and we could find that tensegrity in the structure again? So the rebounding that Barnes talks about is gently shaking people. Again, there's like a 5-day seminar on it that I've taken it's a lot more nuanced than just shaking people, but that's the idea. It's this idea that we are made of liquid on the inside, and that we can kind of bring the body into chaos in a good way, kind of help stuff reorganize through through this rebounding therapy, it's called. And then the third principle, which for our time together is actually a little bit the most relevant and interesting, is he talks about myofascial unwinding. All right, and myofascial release unwinding in the Barnes approach is you moving yourself in space and releasing fascial restrictions on your own. And how you do this is you kind of just move into weird positions. And by weird, I mean like you kind of need to tap into your subconscious mind. And doing yoga is a great way to start getting comfortable with your body, because if you're in uplifted, like you've probably done enough cat-cows and you've probably done enough down dogs, and maybe you've had the experience in your cat-cows where you're like, you know what, I kind of want to like make a neck circle, or I kind of want to move my hips towards my left foot and take my seat in a circle, or right, you kind of start to get more body aware. This is why yoga and MFR marry together so nicely, that yoga kind of helps you develop this body awareness where you start to get kind of like curious about how something else might feel. And what Barnes would say, and what a myofascial release unwinding is you start following that instinct, and then you continue to follow it until you're just like moving completely from your subconscious mind. You've turned off your linear left brain, it's off, and you are completely just moving subconsciously, just kind of trusting your own movements. So you could dim the lights, you could light a candle. It's great to do it in bed, as weird as that sounds, because a lot of times it's good to get into very, very weird positions. And by weird, I mean like you could slither off your bed, so half your body's on your bed and you're kind of like in a half back bend and you're reaching your right arm, and you're upside down and, like kind of knocking over your nightstand. Like this is sort of what happens when you unwind yourself, at least for me. So I really like being on a bed because it gives me sort of a structure that I can fall off of. And in a traditional myofascial unwinding, you're actually spotted by 3 or 4 other people, so that those 3 or 4 other people who are kind of spotting you help take gravity out of the equation. So the whole idea is that you take gravity out of the equation. So you're allowing the patient to just move in space from their subconscious, however they want to move, with their eyes closed, and kind of like a tag team, the 3 other people just sort of like support them. So if I decide to just fall, like they'd kind of like support me in helping me get to the ground, but I'd be able to just continue to move from my subconscious. If it sounds weird, it is weird. Let me tell you, when I went to my first unwinding seminar, I thought all these people were nuts, and most people have that experience when they go. However, I had some of the biggest breakthroughs in areas where I had injuries through doing this work. And again, I could talk about this for 9 hours, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. But what you can begin to do at home, and you don't have to spend a lot of money or read a book or do anything crazy, is you can just set some time aside, either in your bed or in your yoga mat if you're more comfortable, and just begin to let yourself move intuitively. And then what will happen, or what happens for me, is I'll get into some sort of like interesting position, and a lot of times I start with a prop, right? Or I start with the foam roller at my low back in bed, right? Or I start with the spiky ball in bed with me under my armpit, or I start with like some place where I know I want to do some kind of more traditional MFR release, which would mean shearing, right? So the fascial foam roller, the spiky red ball that you can get on my site, all those things, like you let them dig into your fascia, into your connective tissue, and that's the first part of it. You just let the foam roller or the ball sink into your connective tissue, because it has to kind of melt in first, right? If you just start moving, it's like the grooves of the spiky ball or the foam roller hasn't sunk in yet. So this is why this is a slow play, right? This isn't like moving around quickly like a crazy person. It's like you let yourself sink into the roller or sink into the ball, maybe for 3 to 5 minutes. It's a very long time. And then you start to make some micro movements, because now the ball or the roller has kind of sunk in and connected with your connective tissue. So there's resonance. And then you start to move, and it's actually doing something, right? And again, small movements, very small movements, because according to John Barnes, no healing can take place if we're in fight or flight mode or freeze mode. That's another response. But no healing can take place if we're moving quickly. So he'd say that like a deep tissue massage is basically like abuse for your body. No healing can occur in a deep tissue massage, according to him, because it's like vigorously rubbing, right? And it's sort of like all over the place. A myofascial release therapist would like put their hands on one area of your body where you have a fascial restriction, where the cables are too dense or too tight. They would hold their hands there for 5 to 10 minutes, come into a state of resonance with you as the practitioner, meaning that their hands have really sunk into your connective tissues at the deepest level, and that you feel safe, right? Because if we just start massaging, like subconsciously your body's still in fight or flight mode because we don't know what's coming next, and it's too fast. And again, there's no resonance between the practitioner and the person on the table. So a myofascial release therapist will move much slower, and sometimes they'll just pull your arm for like 10 or 15 minutes and things will just open. I mean, it's a really incredible experience, this way of moving much slower. So you're back to us at home this month. Is you can start with like a yin style posture or a foam rolling posture, like the yin style forward fold, like we talked about in the last live call. That would be a great one to do in bed. And then what I would suggest to do next is, after you've been in that yin posture for several minutes, right? Either the yin posture or some sort of posture with your foam roller, ball, or prop. Once you've been there for several minutes, you'll start to perhaps feel desirous of like, oh, I wish someone could just pull my arm, or like, oh, I wish I could just release this right lower section of my low back, because you feel that's kind of where a tingling or an opening or something interesting is happening. And then what you do is you want to put your own hands there. Touch yourself. You want to touch yourself there, and kind of touch yourself in the way that you wished someone would if they were helping you release that area, like a masseuse or a therapist or someone like that. So a lot of times for me, it starts with me putting my hand on my low back. And then I don't knead or massage or do anything fast. I just keep my hand there. And usually I just traction, right? So to engage with the fascia, it's all about tractioning the fascia, right? That's why we need to sit on the foam roller, like I said, for a long time, or be on the ball for a long time, so that we can kind of like slide off it. So it's like we kind of have the connective tissue. Think about it. It's like the stuff under your skin, and kind of stretch it like you'd stretch, like think of like gum on your shoe, right? You want to slowly begin to traction off of your prop. Or if you have your hand there, you want to start like slowly tractioning your low back. So keeping your hand there and then moving very, very slowly. So letting your hand sink into your body and then very gently moving. And then sometimes that's all that will happen. And then other times you'll begin to spontaneously unwind. And this may or may not happen, like no pressure. For me, it's always kind of like unexpected when I'm going to have like a big unwinding, and I need to be set for it, right? Like I need all the lights off. I need to have the house to myself. I need to have, last time I had a candle lit, and I actually wish I hadn't, because it got very physical and I was afraid I was going to knock the candle over subconsciously and burn my house down. So the candle actually might not be the best idea, but you might find that like you press the low back and then all of a sudden your body just wants to move. Like all of a sudden you're just kind of like sitting up, or your head's rolling, or you want to like slide off the bed, and what's happening is your body's beginning to find these positions in space that Barnes says is connected to past traumas. So if you find yourself unwinding regularly, you'll find you tend to hit these same weird shapes in space over and over and over again. And for me, it's very often like my head thrown back, my head completely thrown back, me kind of like arching my chest like camel, like a camel pose, and just yeah, that's like a position I hit in space a lot, and it's really weird. But it's completely connected to my jaw surgery that I had when I was 16, because they cut my chin and the area right below my chin, and did a lot of surgery in that area. So I'm constantly like lifting that area up where I have the scar underneath my chin, because that's a position of past trauma for me, right? So, and a lot of other people hit weird positions in space where like maybe they got flung out of the car during a car accident or something else traumatic happened. And there's, again, so much more detail on why this happens, but I'm not going to go into now, but that basically just know if you're doing some unwinding or intuitive movement at home and you find yourself hitting some really weird shapes that like are not yoga poses, that's fine. And the biggest thing to know that Barnes says is that you can't hurt yourself when you're unwinding, because your subconscious is protecting you. It has your best interest at heart. And I mean, I guess you could hurt yourself if you like slithered off your bed head first and, you know, did something nuts. But for the most part, even though you're sort of like taking your brakes off, and that's what unwinding is ultimately, it's taking your brakes off and just letting your subconscious rule the show in terms of your movement for a little bit. He says that you won't injure yourself because that subconscious is also sort of like your guardian angel and protector, and won't like do anything too crazy or bad. I'm not doing a very good job at explaining it. I'll look it up exactly what he says in one of his books. But you don't have to worry about hurting yourself in the sense that you're gonna like pull something, or and sometimes you kind of do. Like I've had a lot of experiences with this where it just feels like something in my neck is pulling or wants to release so bad, and like it feels kind of weird when I'm unwinding or even maybe immediately after, but then the next day it's like boom, everything feels clear. Or I feel like I've been through a dryer, like a tumbling machine, but it feels like all these weird places that needed to stretch and needed to open and needed to release got to release. So I'm sure you're either terrified right now and think I'm a huge weirdo, or you're like, this is cool, I'm going to try this at home. What you can do, again, is start with the classes that are in the plan. You can start with using props and doing a yin style position, maybe in your bed, and just letting yourself explore some more intuitive movements. That's really the first step. So it's like yin posture, or, you know, yin posture with a prop, step 1. 2, allow to stay in that yin posture or posture with the block for 5 to 7 minutes. Then allow yourself to intuitively move, see what comes up. Put your own hands on interesting spaces. So whenever I unwind, I constantly take like 2 fingers to areas below my jawline and my neck, like pressure points, and I'm constantly pressing into them because I'm feeling like dense fascia there that wants to rehydrate and kind of like burst apart. So allow yourself to put your hands wherever you're feeling sensation, and then just trust your subconscious to move intuitively, trust that you won't get injured, and just see what happens. And that's one way you can begin playing with some of the deeper aspects of myofascial release right away. Because if you talk to a physical therapist, they're just going to be like, oh yeah, myofascial release, it's foam rolling, stimulate, you know, let's work on your connective tissue. Or even when I talk with Jen in the class that she and I collaborate on, she's a physical therapist, right? And she's like, oh yeah, you can just, you know, foam roll for like 30 seconds on each side. And, you know, that is great to kind of like wake up and say hello to the connective tissues. But if you wanted to fully do like a big release, Barnes would be like, no, like 30 seconds is not enough because the body's just going to be in fight or flight. You need to be on the roller for 5 minutes or more. So there's there's different schools of thought about all of this, and ultimately you're going to find what you like and what works for you. And again, it really depends what your intent is. If you're just doing some foam rolling before a run or some foam rolling before yoga to get you ready for splits, yeah, just doing 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes is fine. But if you're like, no, I want to work deeply with myself right now, if I'm really trying to maybe drudge up some past trauma issues, trying to kind of bring my body back into a state of homeostasis. I really want to work on realigning my whole body, like figuring out what is it, that thing in my hips that's always bothering me? What is it, that thing in my shoulder that always feels misaligned? What is it, that thing that I always feel like my left trap is higher than my right? Like when you're in that mode, like I'm trying to get curious about my body, I'm trying to heal something from within, you want to be on the roller for 5 to 7 minutes and then follow the steps that I outlined. And just play with it. Have fun with the classes, right? I don't teach anything crazy like the unwinding or anything in the classes. They're just all soft tissue mobilization techniques. But the visualization that we do in the Discover Your Affirmations class and all the cues I give in that class, especially to get you in touch sort of with your subconscious, which is where you're going to, your subconscious, also your highest self, your highest power. Everything I talk about in that class, in the part that's just the guided visualization section of that class, is very Barnes inspired. And I use a lot of the same language that he uses. So I hope you guys enjoy that. And if if nothing else, you'll probably find it deeply, deeply relaxing, which is always a plus. So leave your comments, questions, thoughts in the Facebook group. If you're absolutely terrified and you're like, I just want to do yoga, that's totally cool. Just do yoga. But so many of you have asked me to go deeper on all of this. And I just felt like I really owed it to the uplifted group. And like we all know each other well enough now that I can unveil a little bit like how much I love this work, how powerful it really is. And I really hope I did a decent job trying to explain and convey what the fascia is. You can always Google photos of the fascia. You can always, get a visual on your own. And I hope that some of this is somehow helpful to you. Again, looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks for being an uplifted member, and I hope we have a great month. So much love from my heart to yours. Namaste.